Over the past 10 years of coaching and getting my degree in exercise science, I've started to see a pattern that people who have success with their nutrition have a certain cycle that they'll progress through when they're starting to make a change. And this is also something that I've seen emerge after working with thousands of clients at this point. And the ones who are really successful will make this tighter and tighter and faster and more efficient every time. And this is something that I want to give to you. And this is a tool that you're going to use from now moving forward. Anytime that you want to make a change to your body composition, whether that is gaining muscle or losing fat, you're probably going to go through some type of cycle that looks very similar to this. So let's talk about what that cycle is, starting with your trigger. So it all begins with a trigger that will tell you that you need to start making a change. This is completely subjective to you. For me, it's when I start to lose my six-pack, I know that I am triggered to start going down the cycle so that I can tighten up my nutrition a little bit. I mean, for most people, it's when they gain a lot of weight over the holiday season. The trigger is that they see a physical difference in them in the mirror, and then the new year, that's where the fitness industry starts to get a lot of people trying to lose the weight that they just gained. Once you understand your trigger and you are prompted to start to make a change, the next step is to start to track. So as we go along the cycle, we go from trigger to tracking. Tracking is something that doesn't have to be super complicated. We just want to start to understand the factors that are going into where your body composition is currently, okay? Some of the big ones are your total calorie count, your macronutrient breakdown, your timing of your food, the quality of your food, okay? Even the supplements that you're taking might be affecting you, okay? And then once we start to understand those things, and we need a couple weeks of data at least, and this is something that you need to be consistent with, then we can start to evaluate, okay, what are the things that are out of place? What are the things that don't align with the general recommendations and what works for most people? And let's start to get those big pieces into place so that you have the basics down. That leads us into our next phase, which is triage. After the tracking, we start to evaluate what is most important and impactful and what is least important and impactful. So the most important things are the amount of energy that you're putting into your body versus the amount of energy that you're expending. If the amount of energy that you're putting into your body is higher than the amount of energy that you're expending, the laws of thermodynamics are not going to suddenly disappear. You are going to start to gain mass. That is how that works. Okay, there's not really any way around that. And then if those things are in place, then the types of food that you're giving your body and what type of fuel that you have is going to determine what it looks like on your body. So if you're giving yourself a lot of highly processed sugary foods, then as you get bigger and you gain more mass, it's going to be more in body fat. If you're giving yourself more protein and less processed foods, when you get bigger, it will be more muscle mass. So that kind of determines the type of size that you're gaining. And then from there, we start to look at what you're expending per day. So your exercise, your NEAT, which is your non-exercise thermogenesis, which is a big word for burning calories. So what are you doing during the day? Are you sitting most of the day? Do you walk often? How many calories do you burn outside of the gym? So those are types of things that we do in our triage to start to understand, am I getting the basics right? If not, then we need to start working on the things that make the biggest impact on our body composition. Once we begin to triage, the diagram should actually look a little bit more like this. So instead of going straight from triage up to maintenance, we're gonna go triage, and then we're going to get one aspect of our nutrition to maintenance, and then we're gonna go back to triage. And then maybe here we work on macronutrients, and then maybe here we work on our carb timing, and then maybe here we work on our supplements, and each layer we go out is going to have a smaller percentage impact on our total gains or losses. Okay, so the first things that we do are going to have the most impact. And then as we progress out and we feel like we're maintaining those well, it's like, let's say that I've hit myself, or I've put myself on a certain calorie count that I want to maintain, and I know that that is going to make the largest change in my body composition. If I can hold that for 2 weeks, then maybe I'm going on to the next thing that I've triaged, then the next factor after that. But you have to maintain them before you start to layer. This is kind of a monotonous process of trying to stay consistent, and then once you see a little bit of success, layering on and then trying to stay consistent again. This takes a really long time to really get down. And so I don't blame people for kind of losing it here, but this is also kind of a bottleneck where people start to feel like they don't see the results that they want. And that's because they try to do everything all at once. We want to make sure that we're habit stacking. We start with something very easy to accomplish, and then we accomplish it day after day after day after day, and then we add something else on top of that. Okay, so don't make the mistake of figuring out all the things that could be improved and trying to improve them all at once. After we get through with our triage, then it's on to the maintenance. Okay, this is the easiest part of our process. In our maintenance phase, we're just trying to ensure that all the factors that we worked on triage are continuing on a regular basis. So I want to see consistency in all the things that I set up. And sometimes there's a little bit of a regression between the maintenance and the triage. Okay, you can have a nice tight feedback loop. If one thing isn't doing so well, you can go back and restart it. But that doesn't mean that you have to start the whole cycle back over again. Okay, where we get from maintenance to another trigger, this is inevitable. Okay, no one has held a perfect physique forever. They have either wanted to gain more, or they've wanted to lose more, or life gets in the way and something happens. The holidays hit you harder than you expected. But this is where you want to improve. Okay, so maintenance to trigger should actually look a little bit more like this. Maintenance to a different, tighter trigger. So my trigger here is going to be, okay, maybe it's not when I gain 10 pounds of fat. Maybe it's only when I start to see small visual changes in my body. Then I start to go through again. Okay, I've seen some changes in my body that I dislike. Now I'm going to go back into the tracking, which again should be a little bit tighter this time. We should have the ability to make all of this cycle a little bit tighter and more efficient, because I've done the tracking before. I know how that works. I can do it instead of a span of a month and a half. I can do it in 2 weeks and still get the information that I need. And then I know the factors that I struggled with before in my triage. I know that I have a tendency to undereat on my protein and overeat on my fat. So those are the first things that I'm going to look at. And then once I get those on, I'm into maintenance again. And if we can make this smaller and smaller and tighter, this is the best case scenario, where it's a very tight loop of like, maybe I just need to track for a week and I'll get myself back on track. And then my maintenance phase is years. And then if I fall off again and I hit another trigger, then I'm going to go through a couple week-long loop of this nutrition cycle instead of taking years to develop my nutrition. That's the ultimate goal, so that in the future, when you start to come off of what you see as ideal for your body composition, you know exactly the playbook that you're going to go through, so that you can start to make changes. And like I said, it doesn't matter what it is, gaining muscle, losing fat, it won't matter. You know what to do, okay? And really, the hardest part is understanding the triage and knowing all the factors that make the biggest difference. This is where consulting with an expert comes into play. And obviously the people that have gone through the Catalyst program know that they should seek out an expert, and it helps with the efficiency of this. However, you can educate yourself on what the basics of nutrition are. There's a lot of information out there. Just go start to look at what the people who are ripped, what are they doing, okay? How much protein are they eating? It's usually going to be a gram per pound. How much fat are they consuming? How much carbohydrates are they consuming? And I'll tell you one thing that with this nutrition cycle, the one factor that if you take away will help you the most is that if you can go through the cycle with consistency, then you will be able to do it so much faster and easier than everybody else. Because where people lose it on the cycle is everybody has a trigger. Everybody looks into the mirror at some point in their lives and says, I would like to make a change. Getting from trigger to tracking is the place where most people fall off at the beginning, okay? Because they'll go 1 day good, 2 days, all right, I'm on a roll, and then something gets in the way. And then they start up next week, okay, back to the beginning. Day 1, I'm good. Day 2, all right, here we go. And then, oh, my dog died. That's sad. I guess I'm not going to track anymore. I had to go on a work trip. My wife called me and my kid is sick and I have to go pick him up from school. These little things will start to derail you, okay? If you can figure out a way to do the simple things on a daily basis, then you will be able to go through the whole cycle nice and smooth. But the majority of people out there will start to lose it in the first week because they can't do it consistently. So if there's one thing that you take away from the nutrition cycle, it's that 1, nutrition isn't that complicated, and 2, that's 2 things. 2 is that if you do this with consistency in place, then it will be successful.